Welcome, I'm Todd Raffel with ERE Media. ERE.net is our domain name, and I'm here with Felicia Moghadam. She is a fellow member of the hard-to-pronounce name club, Felicia Moghadam, from the startup. She is founding Talent City. Talent City is with an S, T-A-L-E-N-T-S-I-T-Y. She's back and forth between Los Angeles and San Francisco Bay Area, San Francisco Silicon Valley area. Back and forth a lot, and actually going to spend LA right now. I'm going to spend a month in San Francisco. And we're talking about these two places, Northern and Southern California, the differences, the similarities, the technology scene, recruiting scene, the scene in general. Some of these differences are well known if you're in the state, maybe less known if you're, say, overseas or something. San Francisco is is foggy. And down here is smoggy, a little less than it used to be. And it's grayer up there. Down here in Los Angeles, nice and sunny all the time. Both places short of water, more water in San Francisco. Big drought down here, particularly in Southern California, where people are actually showering less, according to data, believe it or not, showering and bathing less. Huge technology companies in Northern California like Intel, Cisco, Google, Apple, Oracle, and on and on and on. Los Angeles, you have a little bit of everything. You have medical employees working for places like Boston Scientific, Amgen, Medtronic. You have one of the biggest technology sectors in the U.S., biggest port in the U.S., biggest manufacturing base in the U.S., biggest entertainment workforce in the U.S., all that in L.A. A lot of money, but money in L.A. is, people buying their mocha lattes. In Northern California, you have more money being spent by venture, even though it's smaller, more money being spent by venture capital companies into small startups. And what does that mean? What's going on there? What kind of recruiting scene is there? Felicia.
Well, thank you so much, Todd, for having me today. It's a great honor to be able to have this chat with you. Thanks for the invitation. I think that the recruiting scene in San Francisco, I just came there from a job fair that I was at. We had a table for other growing startups that are hiring. And I think that a lot of, if you go to San Francisco, you can expect to work within a startup that's thriving, that has a lot of momentum, or, startups that have grown their names out. But it's really, San Francisco is really the hub of tech startups. I think that the referrals are going to be your best source, though, because San Francisco is very small. It's kind of like a small New York, and everybody knows everybody in San Francisco. I mean, I've been up there a few times, but I've already crossed paths with people I've known. So I think that in order to get work in San Francisco, the best thing to do is network and be there amongst the locals, and understand if you're building credibility with them, then you'll be able to build credibility faster for a new position. But I also think that LA is more of an entrepreneurial hub, where you're not just getting the entrepreneurs in tech, you're also getting the entrepreneurs in entertainment. And the culture of LA is very, I moved to LA to make it type of saying. So I think it's really interesting to go back and forth. However, Los Angeles is very spread out, so not many people know each other as well as San Francisco does, where everybody's kind of in the same place. Go ahead.
Los Angeles, there's been a lot of play or attention in the media about the startup scene. It's nothing like in Silicon Valley per capita in relation to this huge, sprawling metropolis, which is actually, LA is actually an amalgamation of cities, each with hundreds of thousands to millions of people each: Glendale, Long Beach, Pasadena, Los Angeles, Orange County, so on. There's been a lot of attention to the startup scene, and a lot of employers who have been around a while, like the Snapchats and did I say Snapchat's been around for a while? I don't mean like Snapchat's like GE, but like Snapchat, Facebook, Google, and Yahoo. They've been around for a few years, Cornerstone, On Demand. A lot of attention to those companies hiring quite a few more people in LA. So there is a growing kind of a technology and recruiting competitiveness in LA that maybe there wasn't a few years ago. Is that right?
Absolutely. Actually, Playa Vista is really growing. I mean, Venice is really the hub of startups, but there is Tinder, which is in West Hollywood, and Playa Vista now I think has Microsoft and Google, and more companies are kind of merging over to LA because the real estate is very expensive in San Francisco, which is also another piece of why people don't go to San Francisco for work, because they feel like they can't afford it. So I think that geography plays a very big role in recruitment, and then being able to move towards LA. I mean, we see some of the angels coming from San Francisco to build out the LA tech scene as well. There's definitely a lot of stuff brewing here. So I think it's really interesting, and I'm interested to see kind of how everything plays out and how fast, the tech scene, the entrepreneurial scene grows in LA versus San Francisco.
You brought up a couple interesting points, one just now and one before. One before, when you were talking about the entrepreneurial aspect of LA, it's interesting because for like 20 years, I keep hearing, of course, about the free agent economy. We all hear about that. That is actually the economy for much of LA, believe it or not. I mean, the entertainment industry is made up, as you know, of people who go from gig to gig. They work on a TV show for a few months, and then they, like a contract, they have an employer of record, and then they go to a new TV show, like a new gig. In some cases, they're kind of hustling around for a new gig in between or toward the end of their previous. So when you see people driving around the streets in LA swearing at everyone else and giving people the finger and getting angry and swearing and I guess now smelling because they don't bathe, these are people who are not unemployed necessarily, but rather people who are part of the free agent economy, which is the economy in so much of LA. And then you brought up another interesting point about real estate. There's so much attention in the media to the competitive recruiting in Silicon Valley and in other parts of California and in some cases the whole country. But that's not at all what life is like for most everyone in these places. Life is tough and unaffordable. I was getting my hair cut by a barber about as hard as it may be to believe. It's probably not apparent, but a couple weeks ago I got my hair cut. And the barber, the woman who cut my hair, said it took her to come from Lancaster about 2 hours. And that's how she commutes to work, about 2 hours, because that's where she can afford, and 2 hours in traffic, 2 hours, that's where she can afford to live. So if you're recruiting, this, as you said, is a big issue. You can't just go hire someone from a drug company in Indianapolis to go work for Amgen in Southern California or Genentech in Northern California and expect them to be happy that they've turned their lake house into an apartment the size of a ping pong table.
Right, exactly. And I think to your first point, when we were talking about, how people move from one job to the next, this is definitely a characteristic of the millennials, which will be, 50% of the workforce in 2020, which is kind of plays into what Talent City is doing, right? We are an employee engagement company, and we really narrowed down, building out something that really speaks to the millennial generation, where more and more people are looking for variety in their jobs. They're getting bored. They're saying, okay, I've mastered this. What's next?
Yeah.
If companies don't harness this characteristic within the organization, that's how they're getting the low retention rates, where they're wanting their employees want differentiation, they want variety, they want to learn new skills, and if they don't get it within the organization, they're going to find it somewhere else, and that's causing the job hopping, if you will.
On this relocation thing we touched on, there are differences between these cities. I'll probably offend someone, and that's okay, but I'll probably offend 20 million people in LA. San Francisco, and you said this sort of at the beginning, you said something like it's a mini New York City, and it kind of is. I could see, and I've heard of people being recruited, I know people, to work in Northern California, Silicon Valley, Bay Area. They come from Boston, New York, and they get there and they're like, wow, this is a great place to live. I like it here. But San Francisco, dare I say, is a little bit more intellectual of an environment. I moved here. I grew up in Ohio, which is kind of where my heart is in a way, and moved here, but I spent a few years in D.C., moved out here to LA from D.C., and it's still 20 years later for me, culture shock every day in LA, because if Joe Biden walked down the street, no one would know who he is unless maybe he was on Dancing with the Stars last night or something. And it's not that people in LA are stupid, but it's more of a bubble, an insular bubble, and not as an intellectual environment, dare I say, as Northern California. Am I crazy or no?
I mean, I think generalization like that could be true, but I think that really comes from the competitiveness in San Francisco. I mean, there is a war of talent, and then, you know, people who are in San Francisco, they have a lot of pressure. I mean, being an entrepreneur myself, it's not just pressure getting the product out or serving my customers to the best of my ability, but it's also saying, I have people in my company that I have to take care of, that depend on me to get to the next step in my company. And I think that mindset is very well known, and we want to be able to find the best talent, and the best talent means being able to, you know, tell us what is it that you bring to the table and how do you differ from everybody else. And so that pressure, I think, is not being said, but it is being thought about, which makes, you know, San Francisco, I think, a little bit have a higher bar. Kind of like, if you want equity in the company, you better have your chops, right? So I think LA is a little bit more relaxed, but by no means are people, you know, not bringing that characterization of, I want to be able to do better and learn more and do more for myself. But I think, you know, it is a beachy environment. People want to go to the beach on the weekends. They want to lay out. It's a little bit, you know, the weather is different. It's a little sunnier. So people want to be outdoors more often and enjoy themselves. So I think that there might be a little bit more of a balance here in Los Angeles than there is in San Francisco. When you go to San Francisco, I think things move a little bit faster pace than LA for sure. So
very well said, and much more diplomatic than I did. Very well said. Well, Felicia Moghadam from Talent City, again with an S. If you want to look it up, I appreciate it very much. This has been very interesting. You are ready to get on to your move to San Francisco, where, as I said, you're going to spend a month. I'm here in LA. I've got to get to my tummy tuck. So with that, good luck with everything, and thank you. This has been really interesting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.